Healthcare professionals sharing the news. The baby's been born, the parents confused. It's been taken away, there's a situation, and it's your job to explain the information. Remember, firstly, it's part of them. It's their flesh and blood, so congratulations. Then, ensuring that they feel secure and with the baby there. Then perhaps talk about results of the tests you've made. Leave the medical jargon to when you're with your comrades. And whichever disability, be prepared to talk with sensitivity. Avoid general negativity. Use the name of the baby and parents. See the effect your news will have on them. Depends on how you break it. Then show the network of support available to them and offer thoughts of encouragement. And follow up facts. Give them time and space. Yeah, help them relax.
Sharing Concerns, a guide to sharing a diagnosis of disability with parents. This video uses drama, parents' personal experiences, and interviews with professionals from health and education. It raises issues for good practice and looks at the implications for the lives of children and families. The drama is an interpretation of a range of different family experiences and does not represent a single set of circumstances.
Excuse me?
Yes?
I was wondering if you knew anything about my baby.
Well, when was he born?
3:15. Is he all right, you know? It's just that nobody's said anything.
Well, what bed are you in?
I'm in that room there. I was wondering if they'd forgotten where I was.
Well, you really shouldn't be out of bed, you know. Now, which consultant are you with? Are you with Mr. Carter?
I don't know. They said they needed to do a few tests.
Well, it is Mr. Carter. Now, it should be on your notes, you know, your red book. He'll be around at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. All right?
I'm supposed to be breastfeeding.
Oh, well, don't worry about your man. You know, he'll be well looked after. Now, would you like something to help you sleep?
No, thanks.
Well, are you sure? You know, it might be a good idea.
Do you think so?
Well, at least you'd get some rest, hey?
All right, then.
That's it. Come on.
I'm the mother of 4 children, 3 of whom survive. My daughter was 16 months old when my twins were born in September 1993. They were delivered 7 weeks early by emergency caesarean after I had an abruption. Simon was stillborn. Martin survived the birth and went into special care. And although he was quite poorly, he appeared to make quite a good recovery and was actually discharged in 12 days. When he was discharged from hospital, we hoped, and I was told that as far as they could tell, he was all right, he'd come through it unscathed. I had my lingering doubts because my boys were identical, they were on the same placenta, and with the abruption affecting the placenta and killing Simon, I felt that it didn't seem possible that Martin could have come out of it completely unscathed. When he was 12 months old, we had a follow-up appointment with a paediatrician. It was a standard appointment because of his prematurity and his time in special care. I went to it on my own. My daughter stayed with my mother. When I went in, he said to me, "Any problems?" And I said yes. And I went through the things that my son couldn't do. That at 12 months old, he couldn't roll, he couldn't sit, he wasn't pulling himself to stand, he wasn't walking, he could barely clear his head from the floor. The paediatrician took Martin off me, examined him, put him back in my arms, and with no introduction or preamble, simply said to me, "Yes, I think your son has got cerebral palsy." The term meant virtually nothing to me. I had images in my mind of very, very severely disabled and spastic children, and that obviously was not my son, was not this baby I had in my arms. It meant nothing to me except frightening images. He said that I would hear the term increased tone and told me that that meant that Martin's legs were stiff, and that we would have a follow-up appointment at the Child Development Centre, and I would get that appointment in about 6 weeks' time. That more or less concluded the interview, and I went outside in a state of complete shock. I'd got my baby in my arms and had no real idea about what had happened to us, what we'd been told, what it was going to mean for us for the future.
Golf, Saturday, yes. Hello there, Mrs. Reed.
Yes.
Is your husband not about?
No, he had to go back to work. They're understaffed.
Right. I understand he's a bit of a fitness fanatic.
Well, it's his job. He's a sports instructor.
Right. So, how are we?
All right.
I was led to believe your husband would be here.
Yeah, well, they rang for him. He'll be back by 11. We've been here waiting.
It's just that I have some news for you. I could tell you now, or wait till your husband gets back. It's just that I may not be around again for a few hours, really. Well, it's up to you. It's your choice.
Is it about Tam?
Your baby? Yes.
Is there a problem? Is he all right?
Well, we've done some tests, and it doesn't look good. He scored a low score on the Apgar test, and the cardiograph shows there's a problem with his right ventricle. There also seems to be a problem with his right foot. The problem could be his brain, or his muscles, or his nerves. Highly likely that he won't be able to. He will have problems for some time.
What will he be able to do?
Well, let's just say he'll never make Prime Minister. Oh. Look, I'll just go and find someone to sit with you until your husband comes.
Rita? Rita, it's Sue Lee. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Rita, have you seen your baby yet?
No.
Come on. Let's fix your hair. That's it. Come on.
Where are we going?
We're going to see your baby. Come on. What have you called him?
Tam.
Tam? That is a beautiful name. We are going to see Tam. Come on.
When I woke up, a friend was sitting up by the bed along with Tom, and she stroked my arm and she said, oh, it's my daughter-in-law. And then she said, gee, you've got a beautiful daughter. And she repeated it again and said, gee, you and Tom's got a beautiful daughter. And I remember closing my eyes and opening them up again, and I saw the midwife standing over me, and I looked at her and I said, how's my daughter? How's my baby, rather, sorry. And she said, you'll know when you see it. And I thought, oh my God.
So they took us in to see a doctor who's going to explain to us about the baby. So we went in and he was saying to us, well, the baby Down syndrome. And the way he was putting it over as if the baby would never, ever walk or talk or help herself. Then he mentioned to me, like, well, we can get you help. And I turned and said to him, well, we can cope, we don't want the help. Which, at that situation, I think what he should have said to me, okay, still let me explain what help you can get. But he didn't explain that. So I asked him, what chances the baby have? He said, well, let's say he won't be a prime minister. She won't be a prime minister, sorry. You know, and that part really hits you like a bomb. Not that like we're looking for a baby to be a prime minister, but it's like the baby won't help herself. You know, and she was really hurt for that.
when I came home, it was just something different. I just sunk into a depression because everything just keep repeating itself. And for about I think the first time I went out was when I had to take her for a 6 weeks check. I wouldn't go outside to do anything. I wouldn't speak to anyone. I mean, my cousin came up from Manchester to see me. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I had the girls from the health centre phone me up, asking how I was, and I didn't want to speak to them or anything. One of the nurses came to see me from the health centre, and she said, "Gertrude, your baby's lovely. What are you worrying about? What are you worrying about? She's a beautiful baby. What are you worrying about?" And I said, well, from what they said, I thought, I should be a man. I mean, everything's just going round in my head.
I have 3 children. My middle son, Peter, was born with Down syndrome. Very soon after Peter was born, I realised there was something wrong with him, even before the medical staff voiced their concerns to me. I asked the doctor if he had Down syndrome, and he answered honestly by saying it was one of the possibilities being considered. After being transferred to the ward and being put in a side room, I was told that the doctors would be coming in and out during the day to look at Peter and to take some blood samples, and we were told that we would see the consultant later that day. When we actually saw the consultant that evening, he came during visiting time, which was a little bit awkward. But he went and looked at Peter, who was in the nursery, then came back to my husband and I and took us into a quiet room, sat quite close to us, had good eye contact with us, when he actually said he was 99.9% sure that Peter had Down syndrome. We then bombarded him with questions of all different kinds, which he answered honestly, and he was very positive about our son's future. That first day of Peter's life was the longest day of my life. Waiting to see the consultant for a diagnosis seemed like an eternity. But during the day we voiced loads of concerns. They were always acknowledged and answered honestly. Nobody ever tried to fob us off or not answer our questions. We built up the partnership between ourselves and the consultant began on that first day and continues to this very day, because we still see him and he still answers us honestly.
One of the difficulties as a doctor is that we're trained to cure people, and so when we're faced with situations where we can't effect a cure, then that can be quite difficult. It can make us feel powerless. We don't want to upset people. We may try and protect parents by not giving them all the information that they need. But we have to remember that we're holders of the expert information, which parents have a right to, and we have to find a way of sharing that information in a way that's supportive to them. We can make the assumption that our views are going to be the same as parents, and we can then feel quite negative about a particular diagnosis, when in fact the parent feels very differently. On a simple level, that can mean we forget to congratulate parents about the birth of their baby, but hone straight into the problems.
Being an older sister anyway, of any child, I would imagine that you feel a lot of responsibility. Being Peter's sister has made me mature a lot quicker, I feel. And when I'm with my friends, they often ask a lot of questions like, is it hard to cope, and, I don't know how you put up with him, and things like that. I mean, I've had to deal with it since I was 5, and I've always lived with it. And to me, it's just been a part of my life ever since I can remember. And I think it's important to remember that, he's part of a family, he's someone's son, he's someone's brother. There's a lot of different connections, and he means a lot of different things to different people. But I just see him as my little brother, he's never been anything else, really. And although a lot of the time it is really hard to deal with it, and, a lot of the times I hate him, most of the time I love him, and I'd do anything for him. And I think I'm lucky that, in a way, that he had Downs, because it's made me realise that there's a lot of different people out there, a lot of different cultures, backgrounds, minorities that need support, and I've felt that I've become a lot more open-minded to different views and opinions.
I think that at that point where you're given the diagnosis, where you're the very early days, where you've now got a new baby with difficult problems to cope with, that I always think that it would, it's new, it's a shock, it's there's a whole whirlwind of emotions that you're going through, and I can't help feeling that whilst the consultants and in fact maybe different medical members of staff might be familiar with breaking this type of news to parents, that for us on the other end as parents, it's a brand new experience. It's something that we've got to learn to come to terms with, that we've got to learn about. And I think the way in which I was given the news, I felt that it was very much just put on me, and then it was up to me how I deciphered all the information that was given to me. It's up to me what understanding that I had of it. And of course my understanding was very limited. All I'd ever known of Down syndrome were adults that I'd seen walking on the main road, they didn't look like they were a part of society. They were just left walking, looking very isolated from society. And those were my big fears, and I knew nothing about Down syndrome. I knew nothing about babies with Down syndrome. I needed more information, and yet I felt like nothing was going to be forthcoming unless I asked for it or I demanded it or I made inquiry about it. I was told I could speak to somebody from the Downs Association that would inform me and fill me in about Down syndrome. When I did actually meet people in the hospital, I was asked, well, what do you want to know? And I was crying, well, I want to know, what do I have to do with him? What signs do I have to look for? How do I feed him? How do I lie him down? Is he going to die? I just did not know what Down syndrome was meaning. I didn't know where I was and how I was to be involved in it. The manner in which I was told and the lack of follow-up communication afterwards, I felt like I was being ostracised. I felt like I'd been isolated at the end of the ward. Very few staff came and spoke to me, held my baby or talked to me about my baby. On leaving the hospital, one of the senior nurses called me into the office and she gave me a small gift of talcum powder and some baby products. And to me, that was like the very first acknowledgement of what I'd been through while I was in the hospital, and in fact what I was going to have to face when I came out.
I mean, essentially we're talking about people talking together. We're talking about parents and professionals talking about a child, and essentially we need to remember that we're all going to have emotions involved in the situation. But we are talking about children, real children who are doing well and who are growing up. And that's the thing that we need to remember. We need to remember that we're talking about this child from different perspectives, but with equal contributions to make.
Name?
Tam.
Date of birth?
22nd of the 9th,
Name.
89. Tam.
Can he
Date
pick
of
a
birth.
ball?
22nd of the 9th, 89.
Does he have good
no,
balance?
No.
Can he pull
Can
his
he
hat
draw
up?
a
No.
circle?
No.
Can
Does
he
he
make
stand
believe?
alone?
No.
Does he play
No.
balcony?
No, stop! Why don't you lot ever read your notes? Or even talk to each other? Well, why are there always so many of you all sitting round looking at us? We've had it up to here asking you bloody questions. You know what the answers are going to be. We're going to say no to them all. Let's show them what you can do, Tam.
It's very important to establish this good partnership with professionals in the very early days, because usually you're going to meet a barrage of professionals in the years to come, and how you react to them is determined by how you were treated in the very early days. If you're treated badly, you're not going to want to meet any more professionals, and you're going to be very negative in your attitude towards them. If you're treated sensitively and positively, it helps a great deal when you meet speech therapists, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, etc.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. It's Margaret. Hello, and what's your name?
This is Tam.
Oh, Tam. Not Tam O'Shanter by Robbie Burns, is it?
No.
All right. So when's your birthday, Tam?
22nd of the 9th, 89.
A Virgo like me. You better watch out. Right, Tam, what we're going to do, get your hand flat like that. That's it. Now, you see this finger here? We're going to point it right to the ceiling, okay? Are you ready? On your marks, get set, go. Come on, Tam, you can do better than that. That's it, that's what I wanted to see. Right, you get a big tick in the box for that one. Let's see if Mum's got any questions, shall we?
I was wondering if you knew when he might be out of nappy.
Oh, each one's so different. I think it's best to let Tam decide. Anything else?
I'm a bit worried about his hearing.
All right, what have you noticed?
Essentially, I think we need to remember when we're talking to families about their children that the impact of the words we use and the style that we use to share the information that we have to give can have a profound impact upon that family's perception of us as a person, of the service that we represent, and ultimately on decisions that are made about that child and the opportunities that they may or may not have. And they can be social opportunities, they can be educational opportunities.
When Martin was diagnosed, it was a standard appointment. The paediatrician didn't know at that appointment that he was going to have to give me a diagnosis. But the diagnosis wasn't of an unusual or a rare condition. It's a comparatively common disability. And I felt very strongly, when I look back on it, that I could have had a lot more support, even though he was not aware that he was going to give a diagnosis at that time. Even having a leaflet put into my hand as I left the clinic would have been something, rather than having to wait until I happened to see a poster advertising a helpline. But I do feel that at clinics like the one I attended, doctors must have an awareness that there is a chance they will be giving difficult news to parents. I don't think that it would hurt to consider in the staffing levels to have a member of staff available to help a parent after they've been given that kind of very difficult news. I walked outside with my baby in my arms, and I have always been very grateful that I lived close enough to the hospital to walk, because if I'd have had to have driven us home that afternoon, I don't think I would have been capable of doing it. There was no thought apparently given to how I might be feeling after that appointment, and as far as I'm aware, there was no contact with my health visitor or my GP in between that appointment and the time when I went to the Child Development Centre. It was only when we started attending the Child Development Centre that I began to feel that we had people who cared about us, who would listen to us, who would start to answer some of the millions of questions that were going round in my head, that we might actually get some support.
Points to remember. Written information for parents. Designated staff to provide immediate support. Swift follow-up appointment. Offer of help when telling other family members. Professional liaison to provide continuity of care.
I always remember the midwife who'd been present at the birth of my son. She'd stayed with me, not mentioned anything to me at the time, and I'd had no concerns. She'd left her shift, and I was on the ward, and it was approximately 2 days later she came to visit me, and she'd said to me, I've just come to see how you are and how you're getting on, because she'd known my baby had been born with Down syndrome. And she said that she had not been in a position to tell me. She was not allowed to tell me. It was somebody else's job to do that. No, she was a mum of a young baby, as we talked over the hours. And she'd gone home that weekend, come back several days later to see how I was, and often wonder how she'd coped over that weekend, or in fact what kind of support systems were in place for her, because there she was, the end of her shift, having to go home, knowing that she was spending a couple of days away. And then she had the kindness to come and look for me. We sat and cried together, actually, and perhaps that was one of the first times that I did share emotions during this time with hospital staff and myself.
Points to remember. Support for staff soon after the event. Practices that include professional and personal supervision. Agreed guidelines for sharing concerns with parents.
When a midwife delivers a baby that has an obvious physical problem, such as cleft lip, the midwife needs to discuss the problem with the parents. And there are 4 main principles that she can use to assist effective communication. The first is to treat the baby as a person. The second is to treat the parents as individuals and react according to how they react. The third is to empower the parents. And the fourth is to communicate effectively with the other healthcare professionals. The way forward is for doctors, midwives, and parents to set guidelines for good practice, agreeing specific points. Many doctors have had poor training in the past in the area of communication skills and sharing difficult news. Our organisations are often not well geared. The problems around charter standards and all those sorts of things make it difficult to spend time flexibly with parents. But the situation is improving, and I think for anyone wanting to take this forward in their own team or organisation, there is a huge amount that can be done.
Points to remember. Recognise training needs for all agencies concerned. Acknowledge the need to build a relationship with children and families. Plan how to use the time available effectively. Work towards child and family-centred care.
So I think they need to give all information that's available. They are the professional. So if somebody come in and get into this situation for the first time, they don't know what to expect. So even if I say, I don't need any help, you say, well, let me explain to you the help. And then you explain.
Points to remember. Sharing of information. Listening to parents. Opportunities to make informed choices and decisions.
I've been lucky enough to be involved in a project that's been driven by parents' wishes to improve professionals' practice in a very positive way by sharing their experiences with interested professionals to help them develop their practice really in discussing difficult news with families, in sharing concerns. And I think it's been through that process of involvement with families, with my colleagues from different services within health, education, social services, local hospitals, that I've really had an opportunity to reflect both on my practice and to learn from other people's.
Points to remember. Involve families in developing professional practice. Encourage responsive and reflective practice. Develop a multi-agency approach. Learn from one another.
I think that as far as giving difficult diagnoses to parents is concerned, there isn't any one good way of doing it. It's always going to be difficult, but there are an awful lot of bad ways of breaking the news. And it has to be remembered that at that point, which can be a catastrophic change for the parent, that is what they are going to remember. It may be the 100th time the doctor has given a diagnosis. For the parent, it's the first time they've heard it. And they have to live with that, and they have to go home, and they have to carry on with their normal life, with their family, with all the stresses and the strains and the joys and the delights of parenthood.
I remember every word they've ever said to me, Tam. He won't do much. You'll never be Prime Minister. But I've made sure you've done something, not just thrown you in a room and forgotten about you. And I got strong for you, Tam. I learned to fight for benefits, to ask for contact lenses. I fought for a place in the best school that I could find for you and the best deal that school could give you. Life will throw these moments at you. But what you have to remember is it's about getting the basics right, the small things like building blocks. You start at the beginning, you get that right and you're building on solid ground. You put a lot in, but you get a lot out. Tomorrow it's your birthday. 10. I've got a son who's 10. How many people get to be Prime Minister anyway?
So we've seen the different ways to go with information from the healthcare pros. Strict, officious, frowning and cold, or the warm and sensitive caring mode. I think we know which one works best, so try it for yourself and put it to the test. And in the questions that you must go through, try and see it from the parents' point of view. And if the parents' further questions are resultant, then offer them appointments with the same consultant. When explaining impairments, a little eye contact and a smile can help them deal with the facts. Negative labelling, clearly medical view of what a child cannot do is the way of the cold patriarchal past, and attitudes are thankfully changing fast.